What does it mean to be human? Hello, friends of the European spirit. It seems this is a most pressing question because it seems that we have inherited something from metaphysics which suggests that we are rational animals or speaking animals, and that is the only distinction. And now we have chatbots that are heralded as AI, and we have other tools that can mash together images and produce anything that they are prompted to produce at will. And that's now conflated with intelligence and thinking and rationality, even reason, and even language. It's got nothing to do with language, what's going on there, but there's a different story. But is it in fact true that the Greeks thought of us, or of the human being, as a rational animal or a speaking animal, a zoon logon, a being, a living being, an animal that has reason? Now, if you follow Heidegger, then yes, this is the only way in which metaphysics supposedly has ever thought the human being, as he points out in the letter on humanism. But that's not true. We find rather different passages, for example, in Plato and in Aristotle. Now, I should mention also that Aristotle in fact nowhere suggests that the human being is defined as the zoon logon. There are passages that suggest this reduction, this very narrow definition, but he does not outright say that. Nor does he just say we are zoon politikon, political being. Again, there are passages in the politics that suggest this, but it's always a bit less, let's say, less clear, less neatly packaged. And certainly because, as you can probably guess, neither Plato nor Aristotle spoke Latin. So we're not animal rationale, according to them. We have to look for something else. I have argued, I'll just point this out briefly here in my book, for example, on eudaimonia in Aristotle's Nicomachean Ethics, that if anything, what we should have inherited from Aristotle, how we should retrieve Aristotle, and you can find the book, by the way, on Amazon, just from the link in the description of this video. What I suggest in the book is that if anything that we should retrieve from Aristotle is that we are the zoon logon echon, kai theorian echon. So we have logos, and we have to understand logos as not just reason and not just rationality and not only language, but also measure, for example. And theorian. And what does that mean? Theoria is a field of vision. It's not theory, it's the divine field of vision that we are looked at by and that we look towards, and that lets us see the world in the first place. And this leads us straight to how Socrates, in the Cratylus dialogue, understands the human being, which again is not reduced to a rational animal. And so I would suggest that if you read this, because so many of you will come to this maybe from Arendt and others who just copy this, what Heidegger had to say also, is that this is not the whole story. This is metaphysics, if we like. And here we understand something quite different. It's the human being is the one who sees in a very specific way. So if you want to read up on this, get a copy of Plato's Cratylus dialogue and look at line 399c and following. This comes at the end of a discussion between Hermogenes and Socrates on the difference between the gods and heroes and daimons, and in the end, human beings. Heroes, perhaps I should say, briefly, I should mention, heroes are the ones who are chosen, in a sense, by Eros. Eros brings together a god with a mortal, a divine goddess, or a god with a man or a woman who subsequently have a child together. So heroes are born from Eros. But here now we look at something specifically when it comes to just the human being. Now, Socrates points out that what the language does, and we should take, of course, those who spoke the language seriously here, is that what the Greek language does is it reduces it reduces entire sentences into compact words. So when we hear a word like anthropos, the word anthropology and the Anthropocene, those get thrown around uh, without any meaning. But anthropos itself is is the is a compact version of an entire sentence. So one word is actually a sentence. And then Socrates tells us the following. When we come to the word anthropon, onoma, he calls it onoma. So onoma is the name or word, perhaps. But this is something that happened here too. And it was an entire sentence. This is at 399b still. It was an entire sentence, which has been turned into a word, again, into an onoma, a name, or has become a name, gegonen, which, of which we got rid of the beginning and the end in, in order to sharpen what's really at stake in it. So what he says is that this name, Mensch, Anthropos, signifies or says or means that other animals, so yes, animals are introduced here as well, so we do have something in common with animals, but how we distinguish ourselves is not just that we walk and stand upright, that's got to do with it, bipeds, etc. But no, we are, as opposed to other animals, they don't look at anything and they don't, importantly, the Greek is as episkopeta, they don't recognize anything or they don't discover anything really, because they don't analogizitai. Analogizitai, we could say something like make analogies. They don't compare. We make logos, sense, by analogizing. That's how we make sense. So we could say that it means compare. But nor do they anathrei. They don't intuit anything or look at something. And I mean, really a conscious, aware looking at something. Yes, I know animals have eyes, they look at something. But this is a specific way of seeing. This is a way of seeing or looking at that takes into consideration, begins to compare, to make sense according to logos and bring beings into analogy. That is to say, into a relationship, into a whole. Analogon is not just analogy, these random analogies. I don't mean any of this, nonsense. I mean a sacred bond in a sense, something that really binds together that which is and brings forth the unity of all things. So, and this is what the human being does insofar as he looks at, as he sees. So one way of translating what he has to say here is the following, and that is to say he has seen, the human being has seen and looks at, really it's a looking at that considers and thinks through that which he has seen. So there's the Greek word here is logizitai. So there's so as soon as we really see, we really consider in our seeing, that's when we begin to think already and try and bring everything together. So this is how he understands anthropos, which is to say, so the Greek verb here for seeing is opope, that which he has seen. So anthropos. That's the etymology, if you like, that Socrates and Plato here draw out. Is that the human being is the one who goes towards or goes upwards, ana, and then sees and looks around and takes into consideration that which is and thinks through and really analogizes. That's the way in which we human beings are different from animals. And you see, this cannot be reduced to just intelligence. This cannot be reduced to just language. Instead, this is a full body, a psychosomatic experience. That's what it means to be human. To see and think at once. To see and think at once. To be addressed by that divine theoria also. That then, in the first place at all, let's see the specific way in which the human being sees. Because seeing is not taking in sense data. That's not the point. These aren't substrate, ontic substrate receivers of information, the eyes, like your ears aren't substrate, ontic substrates to just receive data. No, because insofar as we see at all as human beings, what happens is that we anaphron. We see together, we bring together that which we have seen. We bring it into unity. And that is how we are distinct from animals. We think as we see as we think. And that is what anthropos, anthropein, so hopos, we could say opsis, perhaps as vision, as seeing, is this specific way of seeing that makes the human being human. Because we never just, once we begin to see, there's a different way of seeing at stake. And you can, maybe now you can actually see. Just listen to the word, do you see this? Do you not see this? We can say this with regards to matters that in purely empiricist terms have got nothing to do with the sense of seeing. Now, you have, in English, we have expressions, you will know them, of course. I will see to it. I will see you out, etc. There's something with, in terms of care and understanding, a certain bearing oneself in a certain manner that lets something be seen, and you lets yourself see something in a certain light that is always already analogicity. It's always already analogizing, bringing together into a unity. And hence, I can say this again, the human being is the only one amongst all the other animals that is called anthropos. It's the one who looks, who sees beyond, who sees up, looks up. And by the way, Herder, just remember this now, Herder in his ideas, um, of the philosophy of the history of humanity, is actually pointing this out as well, that the human being is anthropos, which is a creature, as he puts it, or a being, I would say, that looks beyond himself and also far and wide around himself. That is such is the being that we are. Such is our being. Such is what it means to be human. Such is the meaning of being. We are embodied spirit, you could also say. We are the idea that understands itself, as Hegel might put it, or the concept that understands. We are the living, breathing concept that understands itself, and hence understands the world, insofar as we see. And hence you can see how, uh, any sort of discussion about AI taking over the human being is completely beyond what it even means to be human. It's outside that realm. That is specifically the human realm, and it's, if you like, it's as biological as it gets. It's as material as it gets. But it has always this other dimension that is the ideal dimension as well. An idea, idein means to see also, yeah? To see in the specific way. Because this, again, even though he speaks of opsis here, um, of course, the way of seeing here is one that is the seeing, and not so much the seeing, interestingly, of the ideas, as you might expect, perhaps with Plato, but it is instead this bringing together into analogy. That is what is at stake, really. So, thank you very much for listening. Maybe I should point out the following, instead of just saying that you should definitely get a copy of Cratylus and read it. If you'd like to read a bit more what I have to say on Aristotle, please do get a copy of my book. And I also do have a course on Plato's Politeia, which also addresses the so-called theory of the forms, and especially how I understand the eidos here, that this notion of seeing in this regard. And I also have a course on Aristotle's Nicomachean Ethics. I will link to those courses in the description of this video if you do want to have them as a guide through these fundamental texts. So again, thank you, friends of the European spirit. We are only just beginning to retrieve these texts, and we should not just stay with what has been handed down so far with claims of what it means to be human, rational animal, etc., which can be so neatly be taken apart. You see, once you describe the human being as an animal, rational, razionale, you have two different parts, as it were, the rational part and the animal part, that you can neatly separate out and claim that, for example, well, in the rational part, obviously, computers are much better, it's much faster, as if that's what it were about. And in the animal part, of course, we can say, well, robots can definitely jump higher, whatever they're supposed to be able to do. But you can see how this can actually be pulled apart. And hence, if we remember that Anthropos is the one being that rises above anabasis and then looks over and above and beyond and around himself, and not just in terms of a seeing, I see this and this and this and this and this. No, what we see is actually always already order in the manifold, unity in what's seemingly perhaps chaotic. That's what the human being does. That's what it means to think, by the way, I would say, is in this active manner being in the world. That's what thinking is. Again, thank you very much.